Now, I mentioned on the last show that I'm about to head up to the Catskills, and I asked y'all for some advice on maybe where I should go or what I should be using. So first, thanks to all of y'all who left me comments. They're really going to be helpful. And to Keith, who just got back from a trip to the Catskills, told me what was working for him. So I check out my boxes to see if I have all these, and I had pretty much all the patterns that he recommended, except for light Cahill. So that's what I want to be tying today. So quick history on this one. It was created in the 1880s by a guy named Daniel Cahill, a railroad worker in New York. Now, William Chandler of Neversink, New York, is given a lot of credit with further popularizing it in the 1930s. Art Flick mentioned it in his Streamside Guide as the one dry fly that pretty much all fly fishermen carry. And Ray Bergman in his seminal 1938 Trout said if he could only carry 2 or 3 flies, that this would be one of them. So, what exactly is a Cahill? Well, there's not really an insect called the Cahill. The name really just refers to a group of mayflies called the Heptagenidae, which is really just several different species of a light-colored mayfly. And there are a ton of light-colored mayflies here in the US, which is probably why the fly's been so successful. And did my cat just jump back up there again? Yes, she did. A lot of y'all noticed that in the last video. I didn't even notice it until I was editing, but that's Peanut, my fly tying buddy. So today's pattern, I looked at an example in Mike Valla's Tying Catskill Style Dry Flies. And if you do not have a copy of this book and you're at all interested in the history of our sport, particularly the Catskill region, go out and get a copy of this book. It's in the neighborhood of $30 today, but to a fly tying nerd like me, the thing's worth twice that much. So let's get started and tie this classic Catskill dry fly. So there is one in the vise, a light Cahill, pretty typical standard Catskill style dry fly. Now Mike Valla says this is, common sizes are 12 and 14. I'm going to go on a 12 barbless 1X long dry fly hook. Let's get that straight in there. And I'm going to use some 70 denier thread in a tan. I'm going to catch it in just up here at the front where I'm going to post up this wing. Now for the wing, we do have a couple of options. It's a wood duck or a mallard flank feather in wood duck color. It's kind of that gold right there. You could just take, 2 feathers right here and use the whole thing on the tips, but I really don't do that. I just take the slips from each side and then try to put them with the convex sides together so you get a little bit of, get them flared out a little bit. And then, let's see, we'll get the thread where you want them to post up. And remember, we're going to have a couple wraps of hackle before it, but we still want a little bit of, bare stem behind the eye if possible. So I'm going to lay my thread, hang it where I want these to be, and then just kind of, measure what I want, what I think the length is going to be, okay? And I'll just do a little pinch wrap right here. And these might get all jumbled together. They haven't yet, but they probably will before we're done. So let's go ahead and catch it in going back. And if you were doing a quill body, you'd want to be pretty careful right back here where you're snipping that off, and then you get a really smooth, or as smooth as possible, taper right here. But we're dubbing a fur body, so it's not really vital to have that perfectly smooth. And if you can see, we've still got that separation right there, but we're probably going to lose that and mess it all up here in a second. We're going to pull these up and then several wraps underneath to just post them up. Pretty much we're looking to get them perpendicular. And see that? They're already kind of mixing up just a little bit. So what you'll do here, just split them with your fingers and then put a wrap in between them, forward to aft, kind of X wraps right here. And that's only one, and I don't worry too much if they're spread out, because when we wrap the hackle, they're going to kind of come back together in just a second. So I think that's fine, and this is kind of how I think Harry Darby tied them, pretty sparse, or Art Flick certainly tied them sparse. Now the Daddies tied them, I think, just a little bit thicker according to Valla's book, but your preference, how much of a wing you want up there. But go ahead and take your thread to the back, and let's catch in the tail. And for the tail, just the stiffest fibers you can find from the ginger hackle that we're going to use for the hackle, and not that many of them. I would say no more than 8 or so, maybe even 6. And certainly you can go with thinner ones if you have really stiff ones. These aren't all that stiff, but I think they're stiff enough. So let's go ahead and catch that in right there. And one thing Vala did say is that, you know, some of the styles, Rube Cross, I think, and Art Flick, would put a wrap up under them, almost to propping those that tail up a little bit. I'm not going to do that. I think coming off straight is a better look, but you know, who am I to question those grates? So spend a few wraps right there if you want to. Just, you know, try to smooth out that body. Not that vital for what we're doing, because we're going to dub a fox underfur for the body. So here's a clump of fox underfur. I just snipped it off of the pelt and tried to pull all the guard hairs out. It really looks white. In the camera it kind of looks white, but it's really a cream. So I'm going to put it on this noodle, and a good size noodle, but pretty thin. Try to get it thinner toward the hook, and then maybe a little bit thicker toward the middle, and then thinner again. So I've got about, I would say, maybe 4 inches of a noodle right here. But one of the trademarks for Catskill flies is really a pretty thin body. So let's go ahead and wrap this up, and I'm going to take it almost all the way up here to the wings. Okay, I said almost, and then I went all the way up to them, but you know what, that's fine, because we can wrap the first wraps of our hackle a little bit over that body. We'll be okay. And another trademark of the Catskill flies is a hackle about 1.5 to 2 times the hook gap. So I think we're good right there. That might not be 2 times, but it's close. And what I like to do with a dry fly like this, I prepared my hackle. This is a light ginger, stripped it off, and on one side I've stripped off a few more fibers. So you can sort of see that right there. And I'm going to catch it in. That's the side that I want to wrap toward the hook first. So let's do a couple wraps right there. And you can go, a lot of people will do this, put a wrap right behind it and try to prop that up so that our hackle feather is coming up almost perpendicular to the fly right there. So I'm going to leave that stem in and catch it in going forward right there, just to keep the smooth underbody where I'm going to be wrapping this hackle. And I'm messing these wings up just a little bit, but I think we're going to be fine. And I'm going to try to get maybe 4 wraps behind the wing, and then I'd say 2 wraps in front of it. But my goal here is to keep these coming off perpendicular. Don't really want them to be, you know, going all over the place. So let's pull these wings back and then get, let's see what 2 wraps up forward does. I don't think that's enough. Let's go ahead and do 1 more. Okay, I think that is going to be hackled enough, and we've still got a little bit of a bare hook showing up there, like, you know, old school Catskill flies do. I think it's for the turley knot, which we don't use anymore, but, you know, kind of traditional to keep that right there. Now we got a little bit of a mess, and I'm going to pull these back. Just try to grab all of them and pull them back temporarily, not real far, but just enough where I can put a few thread wraps and make room for my whip finish here. Still want those fibers coming off perpendicular the best I can. Let's do a whip finish before they all spring back on us. Uh-oh, that thread, I just mangled up my thread right there. So what do you do when that happens? I've got it in my fingers right now. As soon as I let go, it's going to unravel just a little bit. So, well, I'm just going to try to catch it back in again right here. Okay, so it's not unraveling too much. Let's take this. This has happened to me twice already tonight, so I don't know what is going on. Maybe this is bad thread, or maybe I've got a nick in this bobbin I'm using, but I've recaught my thread in right there, and the head was thin enough that I could do that. I haven't added too much bulk by having to recatch that in. So I think we're gonna be fine. Now let's try this whip finish again without messing up our thread. Okay, that worked. And that head doesn't look too unwieldy. It's not too crazy, so let's go ahead and snip that. See what kind of cleanup we've got here. I might have some fibers going back. Yeah, I do. I've got a couple right here I should probably trim, and maybe I will before I take a picture of this fly for the thumbnail. But really, we got a fishable fly. It's not a bad one. Portions look okay right there. Drop a head cement, and this thing's going in my fly box. So that's it, my friends. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.